The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, I'm Pearl Jean Mabe, and I would like to welcome everybody to today's webinar. Webinars are brought to you as a membership benefit of Heritage Ohio. Heritage Ohio's mission is to help people to save the places that matter, build community, and live better. Today we'll have a presentation on bikeability in Ohio. We will be taking questions throughout and at the end of the presentation. If you would have a question, please type it into the question box at any time, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. Most issues with the webinar software will be solved if you close the program and restart it with the link that was sent to you. This webinar is pending approval for AA continuing education credits, so please email me with the information that I'll put in the chat box if you would like to receive credit or a certificate. Our presenter today is Eric Oberg. Rails to Trails Conservancy's Eric Oberg has been involved in the trail community for more than 14 years. Originally from Alaska, he is now responsible for the delivery of all levels of trail development technical assistance in RTC's Midwest region, including managing technical assistance contracts, products, and services. Eric assists local communities with trail planning and development through a variety of strategies, as well as being RTC's project manager on the Industrial Heartland Trails Coalition. And with that, I will hand this over to Eric.
Thank you very much, Pearl, and thank you to Heritage Ohio for having me on today. Thank you, everybody, for chiming in. As Pearl mentioned, please feel free to ask questions in the question box at the bottom. Just so that I can get through the presentation, I think we'll wait and start answering questions at the end of the presentation. I'm very happy to see so many familiar names on the registration list. So to all my friends all over Ohio that have signed in for this webinar, thanks for being here, and I'm going to get right to it. Again, my name is Eric Oberg. I am the Director of Trail Development here at the Rails to Trails Conservancy Midwest Regional Office. I'm going to let you know, if you don't know who RTC is, Rails to Trails Conservancy. I'll let you know a little bit about who we are. Kind of want to talk about from our perspective, and I think from a broad perspective, what do we mean, or what does this movement mean when we talk about bikeability and walkability? Why? Why do we, or why should any of you or anybody else care about this? Where are we as a state? Where does Ohio sit? You know, how are we doing? And then a little bit about trends and innovations. I will tell you that obviously you can see in the name of my organization, we are the Rails to Trails Conservancy. So we do a lot of multi-use trail development. I'm going to talk about a lot of different types of walking and biking facilities, but certainly this presentation will be weighed a little heavier on trails in particular, but not completely. Every good organization has a mission statement, and we are no different. We're the largest trail nonprofit in the United States. You can read that statement right there. I don't think I need to read it to you, but just so you know, we've got over 160,000 members and supporters nationwide. The movement is alive and well and growing, and I think that's a good thing for all of us. We're 28 years old, going to be 30 soon. We've been around for a while now. When RTC opened its doors, there were less than 200 miles of rail trail in the country. There's now over 22,000 miles of just rail trail. There's more than 30,000 miles of multi-use trail in this country. So while 28 years sounds like a long time, and it certainly is, the growth has been exponential, and I think that's I think it is indicative of the appetite that the public has for facilities. Just so you know, we're not huge. While I say we're the largest trail nonprofit in the United States, that's because of our members and supporters. When it comes to staff, we've got between 40 and 50 staff members nationwide, so we're not a huge organization as far as staff goes, but we do have some amazing people on our staff. We're distributed around the country. Mainly, we are Most of our employees work out of a national headquarters in Washington, D.C. The Midwest regional office is currently in Canal Winchester, just outside of Columbus. Very soon we'll be moving to the Miami Valley in southwest Ohio, but we cover from Ohio all the way over to Minnesota out of this office. We have a western office based in San Francisco. We have a Florida-based office in Tallahassee, and then a New England office in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania, which is essentially Harrisburg. So what is this bikeable, walkable community thing? I mean, what does it take to be one? What does it mean to be one? I'm going to cover a few of the big picture things. We're going to talk about infrastructure. Obviously, there are things, there's hardscape. There are things that the built environment influences a bikeable and walkable community, frankly, more than anything else we can do. It's not insulated. You can't just build things and do nothing else. But I want to make sure that we have a basic understanding of the types of infrastructure that are being developed, not just in Ohio, but nationwide and frankly worldwide, and what the definitions are, what they look like, how they work, and hopefully we all are speaking the same language moving forward when we're talking about infrastructure. I think we also have to talk about business readiness and friendliness, and maybe I shouldn't have business there. Maybe I should say community readiness and friendliness, because it's not just about your businesses, but certainly from a downtown or urban context, your businesses are very important. What does your community put out there that lets people who are bikers or pedestrians know that they're welcome, and what are you doing to help foster that in your community? How are you getting the word out to your business community about the kinds of things they can do to put the welcome mat out and let people know that they're welcome? And what can you do as a public official, or maybe you're a consultant? I know there's a lot of different folks on the phone today, but what can you do to help your community or your clients move towards a more friendly community for walkers and bikers? And obviously, the next thing then is legislation. What kinds of things can you do at a legislative level? Obviously, there's state and federal legislation that helps, but it all starts locally. Everything starts locally. If we can't make it work in our own community, it's going to be awfully hard for us to try to expand that to the state and national level. So what are the kinds of steps we can take through regulations and legislation that moves us towards a more bikeable and walkable community? Here's one thing that helps you start. If you're not familiar with the League of American Bicyclists, they do a bike-friendly program. There's a lot of different aspects to the bike-friendly program. There's bike-friendly communities, there's bike-friendly businesses, there are bike-friendly universities. But I'm going to talk about it from the community side of things, and you can see the URL there if you're interested in more information from the League on their bike-friendly program. But bike-friendly communities are graded on the 5 E's, and if you haven't heard of the 5 E's before, it's certainly become fairly common nomenclature in the bike ped world. Safe Routes to School uses these same 5 E's, but you're evaluated on the 5 E's: engineering, education, encouragement, enforcement, and then evaluation. A beautiful tool go to that URL sometime and look. You can get the application. You can download the application for a bike-friendly community. It's it's very comprehensive. It's a big application. They are asking for a lot of information. Frankly, it would be almost impossible for any single person to fill out the bike-friendly community application, and that's part of the beauty of it. You're going to need to do some outreach to your community partners, whether it's your streets department, your parks department, your police force. There's a lot of wonderful information that they ask for on that. And it gives you a really great tool to engage with a lot of these different folks in your community and see where you're at. You can apply to the League for bike-friendly community status. Obviously, you don't just automatically get it. It's fairly competitive. Not really competitive. You're not competing against other communities. You're competing against yourself. How much have you done to meet the different criteria within the 5 E's? But the beauty of the program is if you don't get a bike-friendly community designation, everybody that applies gets really wonderful feedback from the League staff. And that feedback is really valuable to let you know, okay, what can we do to move, to move up? What can we do to become a bike-friendly community? They will give you the feedback on all of these, all the different parts of that application. So it's a really wonderful tool. Whether or not you're ready to actually be designated as one of the bike-friendly communities in this country, the feedback from your application can be hugely helpful in moving in that direction. So take a look at it, but it's a great tool. Where's Ohio at within the league? Just wanted to show all of you this. Here are the current bike-friendly community designations within Ohio. We have some wonderful, wonderful communities that have been highlighted here, that have been recognized. You'll notice everybody bronze right now. New designations for bike-friendly communities are coming out soon. So I'm hopeful that we will see some of these bronze designations moving to silver or gold. But that's a wonderful list. It's been growing over the years. If you look at this 5 years ago, the list was not nearly as large. So I think we also have some great distribution around the state here. So it's fun to see this list, and it's fun to see it growing. And I'm very optimistic we're going to see the cities coming out even higher on the list very soon. So what are the nuts and bolts? I'm going to talk about infrastructure. I'm going to talk about multi-use trails. I think that's something that most people understand what that is. I'm going to talk about bike lanes. I'm going to talk about protected bike lanes or cycle tracks, something that we are starting to finally see emerge in Ohio. Very, very few of them, but they're coming, and hopefully we will see more of them. Sidewalks, and then things like bike racks and signage and that sort of thing. We'll start with multi-use trails. I think fairly obvious what this definition would be. This is fully separated from vehicular traffic and allows for multiple uses. So if you've got just a mountain bike trail or just a hiking trail, those are not, obviously I think that's fairly straightforward, not a multi-use trail. Multi-use trail is designed for multiple users. When you're looking at opportunities in your community, number one, when you're talking about multi-use trails, you need to identify your end user. The type of facility that you will design, what it looks like, how it's constructed, the materials you will use, the width, the surface type, all of these things really need to be dictated by what your end user is. I love the picture on the right. That's the Holmes County Trail in Holmes County, Ohio. A very, very large Amish community. Actually, the largest Amish community in North America is Holmes County, Ohio. And it creates a wonderful, safe alternative for buggy use to get them off of a fairly windy and notoriously dangerous state route. I'm not sure that a lot of trail planners or urban planners of any kind that are coming fresh out of school or coming new into the profession are thinking about Amish buggies as a end trail user. So again, just a prime example of understand your target audience, understand the need of your audience, and make sure that that's really helping you dictate trail design, and trail layout and design. If you haven't been to Holmes County, that's one of the great trail experiences you'll ever have. It really is. A protected bike lane. Some of you may be hearing about this now more than you have in the past. There's been, I don't want to call it an explosion, but it's certainly been, they're proliferating pretty quickly in a lot of places around the country. I wish I could say Ohio was one of them. We're getting better. The first protected bike lane in Ohio was built last year, Central Parkway in Cincinnati. But a protected bike lane by definition is a bike lane that has a physical separation between vehicular traffic and the cyclist. It is not a multi-use trail. This is not for pedestrians. You can see in these pictures there's a sidewalk next to it. The bike lane is for cyclists only. It creates a physical buffer between cyclists and motor vehicle traffic. The idea here is really twofold. It's a safety quotient for the cyclist. We have a large amount of people in this country, and there's multiple studies that have been done on this, but we break break people into categories about how comfortable they are in different scenarios on their bicycle, whether it's on a trail, whether it's fully integrated in vehicular traffic, whether it's on just a regular bike lane, which we'll look at in a minute. How comfortable are people? And the vast majority of people fall into this category that's being called interested but concerned. So they are interested, they would like to bike more, but they are concerned, and their main concern is safety. And they're not comfortable being fully integrated into traffic. They're not comfortable with just a painted white line. But more and more people are comfortable when they have that physical separation between vehicular traffic and their bike lane. And so that really has fostered the development of bike lanes, or protected bike lanes. These are also, sometimes you'll see these called cycle tracks. One good differential between a protected bike lane and a cycle track, typically a cycle track is two-way traffic. So you will have a protected bike lane with two-way traffic. That would be a cycle track, whereas a protected bike lane with one-way traffic would simply be called a protected bike lane. There's a lot of different ways the protection is being built. That picture on the left that you see, that's with the large planters. That's in Parkersburg, West Virginia. I thought an ingenious way of creating some physical separation, physical separation with what they already had on the street. They had these large planters already. They just simply moved them out to help create the buffer, and it works wonderfully, and it looks awfully nice. You'll also see the Carsonite posts, that upper right-hand picture. Very simple. That's actually Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, right down Penn Avenue. Carsonite posts, I will tell you, if you're working on this, and this was learned in Cincinnati, and anybody that does this kind of work, I hope that you realize it's a constant learning experience. But one thing that was learned is you want to make sure you're bolting those down to your asphalt and not just sticking it with some kind of a glue. Unfortunately, in Cincinnati, the glue didn't hold up so well, so many of the Carsonite posts came down. But the bolted-on versions hold up very well. So the simple Carsonite posts, obviously that doesn't stop a moving car or truck, but just the visual and that little bit of physical separation really does help. It keeps cars from drifting over into the lane, which happens a lot with painted bike lanes. That bottom picture, I apologize, it's not the clearest picture, but it's a good representation of another type of protected bike lane. You'll see there's a buffer there with the paint. You have the bike lane, and then you actually have a parking lane next to it. And so the parked cars are actually creating the physical separation between the bike lane and traffic on that road. It works out very well. The buffered section that you see with the crosshatch paint, that's essentially the door zone, which in a traditional bike lane, when you have parking next to it, sometimes the bike lane puts you right into a door zone, which means when a door is opened, a cyclist can ride right into that door if it's open right in front of them. So that buffer area there allows the door zone to be a free zone for the motorist to get out, which is very, very helpful, and the parking of the cars creates that physical separation, which is great. Bike lanes and sidewalks. Bike lanes, again, the difference between a bike lane and a protected bike lane. Bike lanes do not have the physical separation. Paint, it's usually just a line. We're seeing more and more of the green bike lanes, which you'll see on the left hand there. It certainly stands out more. It's a lot harder for people to miss, for motorists to miss. So we're seeing more and more green bike lanes around the country. But the vast majority of our bike lanes are still the single stripe on the shoulder with bike lane designation on the asphalt itself. Typically you'll have the bike and you'll have bike lane written there. There should be some signage as well up on the side of the road telling both the cyclist and motor vehicles what, where the lane starts, where it stops, and how to act. Sidewalks, I mean, very simple, right? But this is how we accommodate our pedestrians, and I think we need to be conscious of what we do and don't allow on sidewalks. And sidewalks aren't just for urban areas. Sidewalks, if you look at that bottom picture, it's very important to have a sidewalk system along some of our arterial streets and other feeders. Otherwise, you have people either in in the mud, in the dirt, in the grass, or people walking right on the roadway, which obviously is not ideal. In some of our urban areas, your sidewalks literally, in a wonderfully vibrant urban area, or I guess I hesitate to say urban even, vibrant small town, downtown context, hopefully you can create a place where your sidewalks are alive. They're a safe place for pedestrians to be. They're a safe place for people to be. Your sidewalks really should be a reflection of your community values. Do you want people to be outside enjoying your community? I love the picture here. You've got vendors out on the sidewalk. You know, can you create an atmosphere where your sidewalk is alive and people want to be? It's noticeable in places that have done that well. Obviously, you need wider than your traditional 3 to 4 foot sidewalk to do that. So think about that when you're talking about either rehabbing a main street or a downtown square or anywhere like that. Is there a way that you can incorporate much wider sidewalks so that sidewalks have a place to be not just an accommodation for people walking around, but for people hanging out and for community, really a place to create community. Other things that really are necessary on the infrastructure side of things, if you truly want to be a bikeable and walkable community, you need what typically is called end-of-trip facilities or destination facilities. You need bike racks. You need places people can put their bikes, whether it's a traditional rack or if you really want to. It's wonderful to see places that are starting to create some artistic bike racks and bike racks that kind of tell people a little bit about your community. That one on the top right there, the one that says bike, spells out bike, that's in Ohio City in Cleveland, right outside Market Garden Brewery on West 25th Street. It's wonderful, and you'll see those all over Cleveland, actually. Cleveland has some wonderful examples of artistic bike racks, and it really, it's really wonderful. It adds a whole new dynamic to that piece of infrastructure. Of course, if you don't give people places to put their bikes and lock their bikes up, it isn't all that inviting. People aren't going to feel like, wow, this community really wants me to be here, or they're making it easy for me to be here on my bike. So you're sending the wrong message. But people are still going to show up. You'll still have some folks, whether they're live in your community, work in your community, or are visiting, that come on bikes, and they're going to end up locking their bikes on, well, the parking meter, as you can see in the bottom center. Maybe they're going to start locking their bikes up on your streetscape trees, which may or may not be the best thing for the health of your trees, and I know that that's an expensive part of a nice streetscape. So there's practical reasons for putting bike racks up. It allows people to lock their bikes. It sends the message that bikes are welcome and that you are openly welcoming towards cyclists, and it also keeps cyclists from having to use all the other pieces of infrastructure you have to lock their bikes to. Proper signage, pretty key. And there's a lot of different types of signage, whether it's wayfinding signage, telling people where to go, what's in your community, especially if you've got, let's say, a multi-use trail or some sort of bike facility coming on the outskirts of your town. Let people know you're there. Let people know what kind of facility, what kind of attractions you might have, or what kind of facilities you might have. So if people don't know what your community has to offer, and that you're welcoming them in, they very well might ride by. Another wonderful thing, if you're creating a network or you have a more urban area that you want to really brand, distinctive signage can help create your brand. If you look on the bottom left there, Indy Parks has done a really wonderful job with their branding, and you can tell when you are on one of the Indy Parks trails within the system of Indianapolis. Central Ohio Greenways has done the same thing around Columbus. That upper left hand is a great example of standard wayfinding signage telling you how much farther you have to go. That one's on the Olentangy Trail. But the standard Central Ohio Greenway signage is now getting deployed all over that network so that people, both residents and visitors, it doesn't take long before you realize, wow, I may be on a different trail, but I start recognizing that signage. These signs look and feel the same, and it helps create an identity for the system. It helps create an expectation of excellence for your system as well. Anywhere in Central Ohio, when you recognize that Central Ohio Greenway signage, you should also recognize I am on a well-maintained trail, and that's part of that brand. And so think about that as you are working on a signage, hopefully a signage program for your active transportation system. Is there a way you can brand it so it sets an expectation for the kind of infrastructure that you want to offer? Then there's always a nice way to tell people to do things right without being confrontational, and that's why I put Indy Park's wonderful dog sign in these presentations. You can be a little cruder and tell people very plainly to pick up after your dog, or you can have a little bit of fun with it, and I think people appreciate that and frankly are probably more responsive to a sign like that than something admonishing them to do what they should do anyway. I'm going to move on. Our business, and again, like I said in the beginning, maybe we should be calling this community readiness and friendliness, although many times your community readiness and friendliness is shown by the businesses in your community. But what does this really mean? What does it mean to be bike or walk friendly? I think there's multiple ways you can go about this. Some communities, again, I talked about the bike-friendly community program that the League of American Bicyclists does. Many communities are creating bike-friendly business, bike-friendly places within their town. Cincinnati, I know Queen City Bike has done a wonderful job of creating bike-friendly businesses. Many of our wonderful bike and ped advocacy friends and partners around the state of Ohio are looking into this or starting to deploy some sort of a recognition program for local businesses and local attractions, and gives them, sometimes it's as simple as a sticker on the front door of their business or of their attraction that says, hey, we're a member of the bike-friendly community here. You can see Bike Baton Rouge has those wonderful stickers that go on some of their local businesses. But beyond something like a local bike-friendly designation program, again, bike racks, look at businesses. If your local business community has something that cyclists or pedestrians want to use or would want to use, make sure they've got a bike rack out front. Nothing says you're welcome more to a cyclist than a place that you can secure your bike to. So it's really that simple. Make sure you have bike parking available. There's multiple ways of doing that. A simple bike rack, like you can see in the upper left. On the upper right, that's what's called a bike corral. You can take one of your on-street parking or off-street parking if you've got a parking lot. But one parking space, you can get between 10 and 15 bikes in one parking space. And if you cordon off that parking space, you can see it's fairly simple in that upper right-handed picture there. Cordon off a parking space and make that bike-only parking, and that certainly screams you're welcome here to the biking community. Pedestrian community, make sure your sidewalks are cleared off, make sure they're cleaned off. If you live in most of Ohio, I mean, we see some snow. Simply removing the snow, make it convenient and easy for people to access your business. Putting signs out front. You can see on the bottom there the Franklin Club. Welcome. Now it's easy to welcome a bike tour, right? When you know there's 100 or 200 or 500 cyclists coming to town, boy, it's easy to roll out a welcome mat because that's to be a nice boost to the local economy, right? But what about the days that there's not 500 cyclists coming to town, but there's still people around, there's still people riding, there's still people on their bike? If there's a way to explicitly put out there that they're welcome and please come into town, it goes a long way. It's very recognized. So this is something I think that can easily be done. I noticed a lot of the registrants we have here are, we've got Chambers of Commerce folks, we've got downtown Main Street people. I think this is a great topic to have a discussion at a monthly meeting, the kind of thing that local civic clubs like Rotary and Kiwanis and Lions clubs, I do a lot of presentations to those types of clubs as well, but this is a really rich topic to talk about in our business community because the kinds of steps our business community can take to say we're welcoming and to put your best foot forward and welcome the bike and the biking and pedestrian crowd. It's not huge capital outlays. It's really not. So I think these are really rich conversations to start happening with your business community. Legislation. What can we do at the local level, certainly at the state and federal level too, but I would like to talk a little more about the local level because that's something that everybody on this call can really make a difference in. One thing happening, and as soon as I say that, I'm going to tell you about a state level piece here, but there is a three-foot law currently at the State House in Columbus, so please go to the Ohio Bicycle Federation webpage, and they've got a petition there to support the 3-foot law. It's fairly simple. It's simply requiring that motorists give cyclists 3 feet to pass. And frankly, from my perspective, it's a shame this isn't already a law in the state of Ohio. It is in most states in this country, but we're getting close. So please, if you can, go contact your legislator. Right now it's in the Senate, and ask them to support the 3-foot law that's in front of them now. But that's an example. You could certainly pass that at the local level, but it's just a minimum of respect for cyclists on your streets. That takes us to enforcement. I mean, I think there's 2 ways of enforcement, and we have positive and negative enforcement of laws, and certainly negative enforcement of laws. When I think of that, that means you're likely getting a ticket or you're getting pulled over for something that you're doing wrong. And I'm well aware after many years of being in this job that cyclists are blamed. It's a constant. You read letters to the editor, you go to public meetings, and you hear many motorists talking about the fact that cyclists are all scofflaws. And you hear cyclists talk about the fact that motorists are all scofflaws. And I think the bottom line is, like most things, there's a meeting in the middle there. Do all cyclists always follow every rule on the road? Absolutely not. Do all motorists follow every rule of the road? Absolutely not. I think the sensitivity for cyclists is when they make a mistake, they're very likely to die if it's a motor vehicle hitting them, whereas if a motor vehicle makes a mistake and does something and it's a cyclist or a pedestrian, the motor vehicle might get a dent, but very, very unlikely that motorist is going to get hurt. So anyway, I tend to really like taking opportunities for positive reinforcement, and that's that picture in the middle. If at all possible, work with your local police department. I've seen this happen in so many communities, and it's really great to see. It's really fun. I think it's really fun for your law enforcement officers. I think it fosters a lot of community goodwill. It allows officers to get out into the community and do something positive and interact with people, with kids. Programs like the Good Ticket program, where officers, if they see, it's really wonderful in the summertime when so many kids are out and about, but really it can happen year-round. You see children wearing their helmet, or you see children following the rules of the road if they happen to be road cycling. But if they're practicing good, safe cycling habits, stopping them and giving them a ticket for a free ice cream cone at the local dairy bar, or you can solicit different restaurants or businesses in town that will donate some form of incentive. And these are insanely popular. And frankly, I think it creates I think we help foster good cycling habits by reinforcing the things people are doing right than we do by, not that we shouldn't enforce the breaking of the law on a bicycle, but especially with our youth, I think let's try to reinforce good behavior. So look into these programs. They're really not hard to pull off. Usually your local police department is really eager to work with you on these. It's really a great chance for them to get out in the community and have positive interactions. So there's multiple programs that people have done. The free ice cream cone is a superb one, but I'm sure there's many other things you can do. Another thing you can do at the local level is a complete streets ordinance. If you're not familiar with complete streets, it's simply an ideology that has been that's been being worked on and thought about for a long time now. If you can, go to the National Complete Streets Coalition website. There is so many resources there now. But the underarching goal and really the main driver of the Complete Streets initiative is that when streets are being developed or rehabilitated or upgraded, all users are being accommodated, or at least all users have to be thought about in that development or redevelopment process. Anytime a road is getting either repaved, completely redone, or newly constructed, the engineers, designers, everybody at every step of that process needs to be thinking about all of the users of that road, not just motor vehicle operators, but pedestrians, bicyclists, everybody in your community needs to be considered when it comes to road development. And that's really what the Complete Streets concept is all about. The streets are a public resource. The streets belong to the public. Let's make sure that we are developing streets that serve all of the public. So please check out the Complete Streets, the National Complete Streets Coalition. They've got wonderful resources. Adopting a local Complete Streets ordinance is something that you can do. Many of our communities have done it. There are wonderful Complete Streets ordinances in big cities and small towns, the city of Dayton, Cleveland, Columbus. Many of our cities in Ohio have Complete Streets ordinances. They're wonderful. They work. And what it does is it forces the conversation. It doesn't mandate facilities. There's different types of Complete Streets ordinances, some that are stricter than others. Typically, it is not a mandate for facilities. It's a mandate for discussion. It's a mandate that planners, whether it's your local or state Department of Transportation, city street department, all of these that have some stake in your transportation and road network, need to be thinking about all of the different types of users of that network when they are developing, maintaining, or rehabbing these facilities. And I think at the very least, that discussion needs to happen. And one way to make sure that discussion happens is by having a Complete Streets ordinance passed. Why are we doing this? Why in the world does anyone care? Transportation, economy, and health. I'm going to talk about those three things. If you don't know, this is why it matters, right? Half the trips taken in America are under a 20-minute bike ride, and a quarter of them are under a 20-minute walk. We can transfer a lot of our trips in this country to walking or biking if we have the proper infrastructure that allow people to safely do it. Anybody that's been around a school during the start or the end of a school day, I don't have to tell you about the increase of traffic, right? It would be awfully nice if some of the parents that are dropping their kids off at school could allow them to walk or bike again. We have slid so far from where we used to be. You can see 1969, 50% of our kids in this country walked or biked. We're down below 14% now. Not all of that has to do with infrastructure. Honestly, a large part of that has to do with school siting, and that's an entire another topic. But think about that, because we all deal with it. When we're building massive multi-school campuses miles away from where people live, it's awfully hard to create infrastructure to allow people to walk and bike. So I certainly have a very fond place in my heart for the many small towns and some urban areas too that still have schools that are placed where people live and work, because it allows this kind of transportation to happen. And I hear so many times in Ohio and the upper Midwest that creating this infrastructure is crazy because people only use it 3 or 4 months a year. We have winter here. Considering 20% of all the trips in Minneapolis are walking or biking trips, there's very few places in Ohio that I think have worse winters than Minneapolis. So I take that with a grain of salt and say, no, we have plenty of northern neighbors that have a much larger mode share of walking and biking than most of our urban areas in Ohio do. So I don't like the excuse of we're a northern state with winter. And people do use them. The newly released Impact of Trails study in Central Ohio, over 12 million miles were traveled on the Central Ohio Greenway Trail Network in 2014. So for people to say, why are we building these? No one uses them. I'd say 12 million miles traveled is pretty impressive use. Many people cannot or choose to not use a car. I think we need to acknowledge that. I think people would be very surprised to know how many. Obviously, children under the age of getting a driver's license can't drive. Many of our elderly and senior population can't drive anymore. Over 10 million households don't own an automobile. 40% of our adult Americans can't or don't drive. We've got, are a little too old, a little too young, handicapped. There are many, many people in this country that can't or choose not to drive. I think we need to acknowledge that. Not everybody has or wants a car. And I hear from drivers, again, get these bikers off the road, right? Or we hear that all the time. Why are we building these facilities? And sometimes it makes me laugh, and I think these 3 pictures show you why. For every person on a bike, that's one less car on the road. Look at how much space we're saving by getting some of these cars off the road. So I drive a car. I understand that many of us have to and do, and that's perfectly fine. But every time I see a cyclist, I say, well, that's great. That's one less car that's going to create more congestion. That's one less car that's creating wear and tear on our road system. So, frankly, I think the motoring public should be clamoring for more people to get on a bike or walk, because it will create more space for them and less wear and tear on our roads. So it only makes sense. The economic value of walking and biking cannot be underscored. I think over the last 10 years, this really is a place where the movement, especially the trail movement, has really matured. We have gotten a lot savvier and a lot better at tracking the benefits of the network and tracking the benefits of this infrastructure. One thing is real estate benefits. We've seen some benefits to real estate being, or trails being developed and the real estate adjacent to it or close to it. In 2011, University of Cincinnati study found a $9 correlation in positive value for every foot closer to the Little Miami Scenic Trail that a home was. And again, that's just a metric. Sometimes, what does that really mean? Well, I think the proof is in the pudding, and these pictures kind of highlight that. Obviously, a real estate sign, you can't put very much on a real estate sign. That middle picture, the only thing that says it all, 10 acres on the bike path. It doesn't say 10 acres, bordering a park. It doesn't say 10 acres of roadfront property. It doesn't say 10 acres with a creek. It's 10 acres on the bike path. That realtor must know that that's the amenity that's going to bring people in, because that's the only thing they could say. And for folks saying, oh man, this is going to diminish my property value, this isn't the kind of thing I want to see by mine. Well, lower left there, I love a $800,000 home. There's 10 different amenities there for quality built custom home, how big it is, 6,500 square feet. Talking about these, I love how one of those bullet points, they can't tell you much about their home, but one of the bullet points backs up to the rail trail. Obviously, this $800,000 home, that realtor and that homeowner must think that's quite the amenity if that's one of the 10 things that they're telling you about in their ad. And then you have large trailside condominium, apartment, and business complexes being built all over the place, all over Ohio as well, and being built right along trail systems, and they're not being bashful. They're calling themselves Trailview, they're calling themselves Trailside. There's one in Indianapolis called Trailside on the Monon. The Monon it's the Monon Trail. I mean, it's fairly explicit. What about users? So you have a real estate benefit. Well, those people on the trail, every one of them, they like to eat, they like to drink, they like to shop, right? So how is that manifesting itself? How are we tracking that, and what are those numbers looking like? I would say the most successful long-distance trail in the country right now is the Great Allegheny Passage in the C&O Canal. That is from Pittsburgh to Washington, D.C., completely finished. $50 million a year in direct annual spending by visitors. $7.25 million was the initial survey in 2002. Large growth, $7.5 million in annual wages. You can see these other ones. I'm going to start moving so I can get your questions in by the end here, but I love that last one. It's more about general facilities. The Outer Banks of North Carolina, the DOT in North Carolina did this study a few years ago and found the annual impact of cycling is more than 9 times the one-time cost of building the facilities. Pretty tough to find public investment that has that kind of return. So when people say this is a waste of money, please send them my way. I'd love to talk to them. They add value. You can see this. This came out of the Impact of Trails study in Central Ohio. These people who are drivers of the economy and talk about what it's going to take to drive their local economy forward. You can see what they're saying about trails. Trails are key to a 21st century approach to building your local communities. These are awful statistics. We all know them too well. I don't want to belabor them. we're not in a good place nationally, and Ohio doesn't sit very well in these national numbers either. We're not a very healthy country. We're not a very healthy state. 30 minutes of exercise or physical activity a day for adults, 60 minutes for children. Walking and biking is a great way to do it. It's awfully convenient if we create the places for people to do it. In Ohio, we're doing decent. We've got right now, and this is from Rails to Trails Conservancy database, and frankly, I know there's more out there. We can't know everything, and that's a testament to what's happening at the local level. We track 80 miles of multi-use trail open, 750 miles, almost a little over 250 miles of trails in development. That's what it looks like. Again, this is my nod to the multi-use trail system. The red lines are completed multi-use trails in Ohio. Those brown lines are old abandoned railroads. Now, that doesn't mean every one of those brown lines are available for development, but it certainly shows you our potential. And we've been doing well in Ohio. We have a beautiful trail system. It's becoming more and more interconnected, and the more connected it gets, the more impact it's going to have on our communities. And the more impact it has will really depend on how you, all of you on this call and all of us, do to make sure our communities are ready to cater to our visitors. We are, Ohio is well situated nationally and regionally with this system. The Ohio to Erie Trail, if you don't know it, that is Cleveland through Columbus to Cincinnati, and eventually going to be 330 miles. Vast majority is done. 280 miles is finished. 300 miles of it's in public ownership. There's not a whole lot more to do there. There's still big work to do, but it's being put together. It's going to be the longest paved off-road trail in the United States. You saw the economic numbers I showed you for the Great Allegheny Passage. People all over the country and internationally are looking for opportunities for long-distance cycling destinations. Ohio is going to be, already has a good contingent of people coming here. It's going to continue to grow, especially as we finish these major long-distance trail connections. Pittsburgh to Washington is finished, as I told you. Getting Pittsburgh connected up to Cleveland, and thus the Greater Ohio Trail System, is one of the key goals of the Industrial Heartland Trail Coalition, an exciting trail project that I'm working on. So we're trying to get Pittsburgh connected into our Ohio system, which will connect all of Ohio all the way to Washington on a trail. There's also wonderful work being done to connect Southwest Ohio to Indiana and eventually Indianapolis and the Greater Indiana Trail System. So we really are on the verge of Ohio being the linchpin and the epicenter of long-distance cycling in the entire country, and that is a big deal for a lot of reasons. This is why we need to make sure we're ready to capitalize on this. This is a Union City, Ohio, Union City, Indiana. It sits right on the border of Ohio and Indiana. And this is a wonderful cross-state gateway park, trail and park. So they're ready. They're ready for people that want to cross the state line on a bicycle. It's a beautiful facility. If you don't know, the largest paved trail network in the country is the Miami Valley, the Dayton area, in the country. It's an amazing asset for Southwest Ohio. It's an amazing asset for the state of Ohio. If you didn't know that, you do now. The largest paved trail network in the country, the Miami Valley. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. The trails are absolutely amazing. So if you haven't been to check it out, do. If you have been and you didn't know this was this fact or that this was the fact of this system, please spread the word. We live in an amazing place here with some amazing assets. Let's not keep it a secret. What are some of the new innovations? I'm going to go quickly through these so we can get to your questions. Rail with trail. It is growing. It is common. It is safe. That is a trail built directly adjacent to an active railroad track. Obviously, Rails to Trails Conservancy started by converting old railroad tracks that were being abandoned into trails. We are now the largest advocate and huge supporters of creating trails next to active railroad tracks. It's really a wonderful, wonderful way to create trails. There's more than 1,200 miles nationwide. We have over 100 miles in Ohio, with some very key connections in Ohio being done right now as Rail with Trail. Some pictures. They look a lot of different looks. Some have fences, some have none. You can see the bottom right, the Steel Bridge Riverwalk, cantilevered off an existing railroad bridge. That lower left is the main Caltrans corridor from LA to San Diego. There are I think over 60 trains a day doing 90 plus miles an hour, and there's not a fence between them, and there's never been any sort of accident. The safety record on Rail with Trail is absolutely phenomenal. Trailside attractions. I mean, I love this one. The Sensory Trail in Lancaster, Ohio. They've created these trailside attractions, beautiful, weatherproof, year-round, and musical instruments. So think about some whimsical, fun things you might be able to do that will bring people into your community or give them an experience on your system. Distinctive signage. I already talked about this, but think about it. Don't ask me what the one on the right is there. I took that picture in California, and I still couldn't tell you what in the world. I didn't see a convent. I don't know, but I have to include it in every signage slide I ever have from now on because it is the most, I just don't know, but it's pretty cool, I guess. Huh? Sisters Crossing, watch out. And with that, I'm going to tell you trails are magical places. Again, a nod to what I do for work, but your active transportation network, whether it's an on-road bike lane, a protected bike lane, a cycle track, a sidewalk, a multi-use trail, thinking about those users and how to weave them into the fabric of your community, the benefits will far outweigh your initial cost and efforts. Bringing these people into your community should be a priority for you, should be a priority for your community, for your business community. These people will bring dollars, they will bring life. This is, I think, a very rich area that we need to keep exploring in Ohio. We have huge potential here, and I hope all of our community leaders and business leaders know that, understand that, and can start jumping on board to be a partner in helping us develop. There's my contact information. Obviously, all of you are more than welcome to call, email, get in touch with me at any time. I love talking about this. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of work to be done, but there are so many great partners, so many great organizations in Ohio that are doing this work, doing it well. We have so many people here that are doing things that are national models. We take people from Ohio to national and international conferences to talk about what we're doing here. So we have great resources in this state. We have great opportunity, and I hope that we continue to build these resources and build on that opportunity. And I think it will pay off to all of our communities, large, small, rural, urban. That there's opportunity for us to latch on to the active transportation movement and really help our communities, for the people that live there and the people that want to come visit. So with that, I'm going to try to get some questions from you guys. So if you have anything at all, whether it was covered or if it wasn't covered, please ask your questions. We've got about 10 minutes left, and I'd be happy to answer any questions I can find. That's a great question here about working with ODOT to implement these community pieces. So there's multiple, and funding. I mean, there's multiple funding opportunities, and I'll touch on some of those, and if you have more detailed questions, certainly email me or call me, but there's a multitude of funding opportunities and programs. One, the Safe Routes to School program, if you're not aware with it, please get on the ODOT website, go to their alternative transportation, although I think it's their biking, is it the biking page? And look up the Safe Routes to School program. It's a great program. Julie Wolkoff is our bike ped coordinator and Safe Routes to School coordinator at Ohio Department of Transportation. She does wonderful work. She is a great asset. She is happy to talk with you and work with you. That's a program that pays for sidewalk, trail, streetscape type work to connect your residents, your children, to your school facilities. So that's a great way to get some of this kind of activity funded. There's also the Transportation Alternatives Program. It's actually a federal program that goes through the Ohio Department of Transportation. There's two different ways to access those funds. One is if you live in a metropolitan planning organization administered area. So if you have an MPO, you need to talk to your MPO, TAP funding, Transportation Alternatives funding is administered by the municipal planning organization if you have an MPO. If you do not have an MPO, you will work with ODOT central office, and again, you would contact Julie and she can get you into contact to the right place. Your district ODOT office also has a transportation alternative specialist in that office, so you can also contact your ODOT district office. The third one is not ODOT, it's actually ODNR. Department of Natural Resources has the Clean Ohio Fund, and that's a wonderful place to look for trail infrastructure funding. They help fund acquisition of corridor, development of trail resources. So get on the ODNR website or search for the Clean Ohio Trail Fund. It's a wonderful resource. Ohio Department of Transportation, the TA funds, you need a 20% local match. Safe Routes to School, there is no local match. That's 100% funding. And the Clean Ohio Fund, you need a 20% local match as well, although the Clean Ohio Fund allows for more creative local match where you could use in-kind donations of labor, materials, and that sort of thing. So the Clean Ohio Fund is a great place to go if you need to get a little more creative, and cash is not something that's easy to come by. Oh, that's a great question. How to begin the rail with trail conversation with the railroad? That is that's tough. It can be tough, and I'll tell you the best thing you can do is do your homework so that you're not calling them out of the blue and just saying, hey, we think this is a cool idea. What do you think? So part of that homework certainly would be getting resources together. Rails to Trails Conservancy, my organization. We did a comprehensive nationwide rail with trail study that we released last year. You can search for it online, go Rails to Trails Conservancy, Rail with Trail Study, it will come up, or you can go to our website, railstotrails.org/railwithtrail. And look at that study, read up. I think the best thing you can do before you contact the railroad is educate yourself. Certainly feel free to call or email me as well, but educate yourself. Make sure you know why you want to do it. Research all of your alternatives. In so many cases, a rail with trail is the only possibility for getting a multi-use trail through a certain community or through a certain area. And so educate yourself so that when you reach out to the railroad, you can tell them, we've looked at all the alternatives. The only possible way to get a trail through this area is, by working with you to create space in your corridor for this trail, and that's important for the safety of our citizens, the safety of our children, because having them on the street is not nearly as safe as on a trail. We also know that rail with trail facilities are extremely safe. You can cite the statistics and the work that we've done here at RTC to show how these facilities are safe. So really, I think that's the key, is educating yourself before making that outreach to the railroad so that you're walking in the door with all the facts, you know what you want, why you want it, how it can be done, what the track record is of these facilities. And again, we can help you with that. As far as funding opportunities, many of the same funding opportunities for trails can be done on a rail with trail. I will tell you, some of these rail with trails are done in different, very often is some sort of a monetary compensation to the railroad, whether you are buying a lease to get an easement, or many times part of what make these projects happen is the bottom line, funding going directly to the railroad. All right, I'm going to get to a few more here. We've got about 5 minutes. Connections between bike ped and historic preservation efforts. I actually think that's a wonderful question, and so many, especially with rail to trail or rail with trail conversions, there's such an amazing history because the rail, in many cases, are small towns and many of our large cities were either built solely for or their development was greatly enhanced by the railroads. In a small town, maybe one of the most distinctive buildings in a small town might be the old railroad depot. Is there a way to rehab that rail? And this has been done in so many places in Ohio and around the country, and that's why it always comes to the top of my mind. Is there a way to rehab that old trail depot in conjunction with a trail project and turn it into some sort of, I've seen them used as your local Parks and Rec Department office, certainly a Chamber of Commerce office. Is there a way to repurpose some of your historic structures that have a tie to that trail? Other than that, I think historical, if you could put together an amenity, if you have a wonderful history to tell in your town, make sure that trail users understand that, or make sure your walkers and bikers understand where they are. Do you have a walking history tour, something, whether it's codes on your sign that people can scan with their phone, or walking history tours. I've seen that done in many places. Can you do that either along your trail or at a trail side kiosk or a trailhead where people are coming into town, you can tell your historical story, get people into your town. There's plenty of history buffs that would love that. So can you use the history of your town as an enticement to get people into town? And then again, if you can help rehab some, the depots are always the low-hanging fruit for me because they typically sit right along the rail corridor, and many of those have been converted. So create advocates out of trail users by not being bashful about telling your history and advertising it to them and getting it out in front of them. Bike lanes, this is a great question. When constructing along narrow but heavily traveled two-lane corridors, the creation of narrow barriers would be desirable. However, in winter, what are a few effective methods for plowing lanes divided by barriers? That is a great question. It's one that always comes up. It is not easily answered, I will tell you. Obviously, you want a bike lane to be at least 3 feet wide. It'd be nice if you could go wider than that. And that does create a problem because your street graders are throwing the snow into the bike lane, right? And to be honest with you, the only effective way is to have a smaller grader in place, and that's what you see in cities like Minneapolis and Chicago. They do have specialized trail equipment, whether it's a small blade in front of an ATV or something like a John Deere Gator, something like that, but dedicated equipment for clearing your bike lanes and your trails in the wintertime eventually is going to be needed, unless you live in a climate where the snow is going to go away quickly. But even then, I would highly suggest trying to get some sweeping equipment because so many of our bike lanes end up as road rubbish lanes, and we see that way too much. And you can't expect cyclists to ride in your wonderfully constructed bike lane when it is filled up with sand and gravel and road debris. It's dangerous, it's not comfortable, and frankly, they're just not going to do it. And so many times I'll see all over the place wonderful bike lanes, but cyclists are right out back into the traffic lane because the bike lanes are not maintained. I think we have time for maybe one or two more. I'm sorry. Let's see. I do see a question about Xenia, Ohio, because of my bike trail slide and how so many things come together in Xenia, Ohio. If you haven't been to Xenia, it really is an amazing hub, and it's part of the largest paved trail network in the country. I told you about that in the Miami Valley. Xenia is a wonderful hub, so folks out there, if you haven't been to Xenia, and another great example of a train station, an old train depot that's been rehabbed, and it's beautiful. So you've got that historical context. You have the coming together of 5 different major trails in one spot. It really is a hub and a unique place in this country. So I appreciate that my friends in Xenia were on this call, and any chance I have to talk about Xenia or the Miami Valley, I love to. Let's see, infrastructure recommendations at intersections. That is a complex question and the hardest part of creating bike lanes, protected bike lanes, or trails, and I won't even have time to dive into it. I do highly recommend that you get online. The National Coalition for Safe Streets Coalition has some wonderful resources there. There's a new NACTO guidebook, and oh boy, too many. I do apologize for all the acronyms here. National Association of Certified Traffic, oh boy, I'm going to kill it. But the NACTO guideline for bike accommodations is another place to turn. There are multiple ways to get bike lanes and protected bike lanes through intersections. There are places that are doing some green paint, so it's more explicit. There are places that are actually starting to do bike-specific traffic lights. That's very advanced, but it's starting to roll out in different places. Chicago has some, I know. So there's a myriad of treatments for getting across the intersections. Obviously, those are the hardest places and the places that will take the most coordination, the most thought, and you really need to be careful there. But I can't touch all of the different ways to do it in such a short time. Again, feel free to reach out to me or start looking at the resources online for that. I think I probably only have time for one more. I see a question about a copy of the PowerPoint. I do believe that this entire presentation is being archived by Heritage Ohio, and you will be able to get online and see this entire presentation again. Will there be a way for them to access the PowerPoint on your website as well?
I'll be sending it in an email.
There will be, it will get sent to all of you in an email, so the answer to that is absolutely yes. Oh, last question. Are rails with trails paths on railroad right-of-way, or do they have to get easements from private property owners, and which is harder? Both and both. Rail with trail there's examples of it being done on the railroad right-of-way, where you do need to get easements from the railroad itself. There are examples of rail with trail being built on adjacent property that is owned either by private property owners or the municipality or other public ownership. I won't begin to guess which way is harder. I will say they are both difficult. Unless the adjacent property is owned by a public entity already, then it's not so hard. But if it's private property owners, that's not easy. The railroads, that's not easy. Rail with trail is not the easy way to go. It's getting better. It is a huge focus of our organization. It's something we intend to put a lot more time and resources into in the years to come. We think there's a huge potential for advancing our trail infrastructure in this country by using and sharing our active railroad corridors. But I'm certainly not going to lie to you and tell you that's an easy way to go. It is a difficult process, but it's doable. We're getting more and more examples of how it's being done. So it's easier now than it was 5 years ago, and I sure hope 5 years from now it's going to be easier than it is today. But if you're looking at, thinking about, or in the middle of working on a Rail with Trail project, please contact me. I'd love to help you in any way I can. And with that, I appreciate all of you being on. I really appreciate Pearl and everybody at Heritage Ohio. This has been a wonderful time, and I hope to hear from many of you in the future. Thank you.
All right, with that, I would like to thank everybody for attending the webinar today. Our calendar of upcoming events, including our future webinars, can be found on our website at heritageohio.org. And everybody, I hope you have a great day.
End webinar forever.